Hi everybody, it's John back again with another model inbox review. What we're looking at here is probably an aircraft that doesn't really need to be introduced, but I'm going to introduce it anyway. It is of course a Junkers Ju-87. The variant you're actually looking at is a B1 from the Polish campaign. This is the subject of the kit that I'll probably be doing a model of. A Ju-87 B1 from the Polish campaign. Yeah, but which model am I going to be building? Well, before we go into that, the GUMF that I'll be reading out will cover some options and costs for only 1/72 scale Junkers Ju-87 variants. But to show you what the differences are between the variants, I thought I'd run through a few photographs just to explain a few things. The Junkers Ju-87 entered service with the Luftwaffe in about 1937 as their primary tactical attack aircraft, and it appeared in this guise as the Ju-87A1. This is actually, I think, the V4 variant, which was the last prototype variant that entered service. And it was pressed into service during the Spanish Civil War, which is why it's wearing splinter camouflage. And I believe the splinter camouflage is grey, green, and a sort of a bricky red colour. And these aircraft went as part of the Condor Legion to fight in the Spanish Civil War. And the V4 became the production variant for the A1, and the A1 looked exactly like this with these exaggerated trousers. It had quite a small radiator filter here under the aircraft's engine, and they were powered by Junkers Jumbo 211, I think they were Bs, which were around about 900 horsepower, and they were adequate for the job. You know, they did the job, and they dropped a 500-pound bomb, 551-pound bomb, I think it was. Or a 250 kilogram bomb, but they had these elongated trousers over the main undercarriage legs, and that is the way you can tell a Ju-87A just by looking at it. They often in the early days had two-bladed propellers, but this one has a three-bladed propeller, which obviously tells you that it's probably actually looking at it, it probably is an A1. But it is in Spanish Civil War splinter camouflage, which is very interesting. The A1 was upgraded to become the B variant, and there were basically two variants of the B variant, the B1 and the B2. The B1s were active during the Polish campaign, and they also were prolific in the French campaign. But by the time the Battle of Britain appeared, the B2 had superseded this particular aircraft. So yeah, that's quite interesting. Also, worthy of note is that there are no propeller mounts for the Jericho siren on the trousers of this particular B variant of the Stuka, but it does have the external underside wing racks, which carried the small 50 kilogram bombs. There were four of them, two under each wing, and the 250 kilogram bomb that went in the slung mount underneath the fuselage. The B1s were they had a serious issue with the B variant of the Stuka because they were a bit short on legs, so they developed the aircraft into the R variant, and the R variant is basically just a B variant with wet underwing mounts to accept these drop tanks, if you like, to extend the aircraft's range. And they became quite useful for the desert campaign and the Russian front campaign, where the distances between the front line and the bases where the aircraft were operating stretched quite rapidly in the early parts of the Eastern Front. The R variant eventually became the D variant, and you can see these aircraft here. They had a smaller chin radiator because this wasn't actually a radiator, it was an oil cooler. The radiators were moved to this position. If you can see them behind this figure, you can see the radiators underneath the wings here, and because of the higher power engine unit, it utilised a 211 Jumbo, I think it was an F engine, because the intended power plant was the Daimler-Benz DB603, but unfortunately the 603 wasn't ready, and it eventually became prioritised for the ME109, and the Jummo was utilised for the D variant of the Stuka. But the 211F engine actually developed about 1480 horsepower, which nearly quadrupled the bomb load and increased the range of the Stuka by about 600 miles, which was about 300 miles combat radius, which made the D variant quite a useful dive bomber. And yeah, the D variant went into service around about 1942 during the early stages of the Russian campaign. And they were heavily utilised during the Russian campaign. But the Germans needed a variant which could knock out tanks. The D variant only had the use of the machine gun armament in the wings or a slung bomb from the centerline. So they developed the G variant, which utilised these pod-mounted 40mm cannons, which went through tank armour, especially tanks like T-34s, like a hot knife through butter. They absolutely ripped the hell out of Russian tank columns. But unfortunately, the G variant entered service with the Luftwaffe in about late 1943. And they were never available in large enough numbers to make a useful dent in the Russian tank columns. But the 40mm cannon armed G variants of the Ju-87 were a formidable tank buster. Anyway, which kit are we doing a model of? Well, it's this one. This is a really old toolkit. With a serial number of 1395, the 1957 release of the 1/72nd scale Airfix Ju-87B was released on a Type 1 bag header, and these came into Woolworths and some minor model shops up and down the UK, and then eventually they made their way into Europe. But these were the first release kits, and it's interesting because I do believe they had a desert camouflage, which would have made these almost certainly Ju-87Rs, because the Ju-87Bs weren't that prolific on the desert, but they do carry the same code prefix as the kit that I've got a model representative here. But I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. So that's a 1957 Type 1 bag header, serial number 1395. And then this went into a 1958 Plasti Airfix release for the German market. This is again a Ju-87B, but as you can see, it's in Western Desert markings with the desert yellow and dark brown mottled camouflage scheme, and this would almost certainly have been a Ju-87R2. But anyway, 1958, Plasti released the Ju-87 in 1/72nd scale under a serial number 23. Then in 1959, Airfix released a Type 2 header, this time just calling the aircraft the Stuka. It had the same decals in the kit, but they released the model with totally different camo patterns, and it became a blue underside and a green upper surfaces. This would probably have been splinter camouflage again, but as we know, a lot of Stukas were just painted green on the top. For the Polish campaign, the Balkan campaign, and when they went into service in France, a lot of them were still green, but the splinter camouflage was coming into operation during about 1939 when the Polish campaign got underway. 1959, the Type 2 header released 72nd scale Airfix Ju-87. That was serial number 1395. Then in 1963, this is a company called Airfix Corporation of America, and they released the 72nd scale Ju-87B in a box for the American market under the serial number 2-39. Same kit inside as the 1957 release from Airfix, but I do believe Airfix Corporation of America used slightly inferior plastic, with their plastic being a little less pliable and more difficult to work with. But that was the Airfix Corporation of America release in 1963. 1967 saw the red stripe, famous bag kit of the Ju-87B. This kit was serial numbered 91, and you still had the scroll logo for the Airfix 72nd scale scroll there, but the kit was a very famous red stripe. These stripes weren't always red, they were often yellow, blue, green, depended on the kit that they were printed on the packaging for. But I would say a good 70% of Type 3 headers were red striped, and that's why they were very famously called red stripe packaging. Type 3 there, 1967, serial number 91 of the Airfix 72nd scale Ju-87B. Then in 1970, MPC in America, they released the Series 1 Stuka in 1/72nd scale under the serial number 7004-70. This was released, as I said, in 1970. It's exactly the same kit as you had in the red strap bagging with the same artwork, but it's the same kit as what was originally in the 57 release. Then in 1972, MPC released what we call the Profile series, and these kits were the same model as you had before, but they had 3 completely different decal options and camo pans. And these are actually quite collectible, but they're not that easy to get hold of, but not impossible. Same kit inside. This kit was serial numbered 2-1107 and is a 72 release for MPC of the Ju-87B Stuka. Then in 1973, Airfix released the variant of the boxing that I've got an example of to do an in-box review. It's nice to see here that you can see the decals right in the front of the packaging, because my kit is the decals are missing from it, but I am going to be able to utilise decals from another kit, a more modern release from Airfix, and I'm going to be able to use the markings out of that I'm not going to be using for the build when I do build the new release Airfix kit, and you'll see that model in a minute in the boxing history. But that was 1973. The Type 4. This is a Type 4C boxing, by the way, 1/72nd scale Airfix Ju-87B, and this serial number is 01011-3. 1973 goes through to 1974, and MPC again. They re-released the Profile series with the 3 different decal options. You can see here exactly where these decal options are from. You've got the Immelman flight, which the one on the top there, T6H, and that is a Ju-87B2 from the Libyan campaigns circa 1941, Immelman flight. The one in the middle is a Gruppe Stuka Gerschwader from the Eastern Front in 1943, so that gives you an idea on how long they were using the B2 variant of the Stuka 4. And the one at the bottom is a B2 Trop of 1 Stuka Gerschwader based in Libya in 1941, and that again is a B1 because it doesn't have the slipper tanks of the R2 or R1 variants. But that was the 74 release of the MPC Profile series, serial number 21107. Then in 1974, MPC Kikola released this same kit as before from the 74 release from MPC, but this was for the South American market, released through their Kikola Brasilia Industria sales agent, if you like, and these kits were sold primarily throughout South America, where models, to be honest with you, they weren't that popular a toy to be produced or built by children in South America. They were more into football and other things, but that had the same serial number as before, 21107. Then in 1974 also, a company called Polysteel, they released the Series 1 Ju-87B Stuka. A more interesting image here, because that Stuka is a real photo of a B1, I believe, in the Polish campaign, and it gives you an idea of what the aircraft would have looked like during the campaign, and you can see that I think that one is definitely just a green upper surface with light blue undersides and these massive crosses underneath the wings. Nice image there. That kit is released by Polystill under the serial number KA4. Then in 1976, Airfix released the first pure boxing release of the Junkers Ju-87B Stuka. This is the 4D boxing, 1976, and the serial number is 01011-3. Same kit inside, same decals, everything's exactly the same as the blister pack you saw before, but this time in a box. They also changed the logo in the Type 4 covers to the more traditional and more well-known Airfix red, black and white sphere logo, which was quite nice. 1976 goes through to 1976, and Airfix Tomy released this kit, again serial number 01011-3. Same kit as the blister pack from before. You can see the parts there, pure as day. They're not great, and they're not great, are they? But that was the Tomy release in 76. And then we go through again to a 1976 release from MPC, this time of the Ju-87 Stuka with crewmen. They're actually the 2 pilots and I believe 4 crew figures. And this was a common feature of Airfix releases through MPC, where they did a special edition with crew figures. And that was released under the serial number 02-102. Then in 1978, Airfix retooled the original Series 1 Stuka with the Junkers Ju-87B2 Stuka in Series 2. This was a completely new tool. It was a much better kit than the original Series 1 model. And they're actually still quite easily they're quite easy to obtain. And again, you've got the planetoid label there, where the Airfix logo is a little bit like squashed out, and this is a 1978 release, you can see, because it's marked new. Serial number for that kit was 02049-1. 1978 also saw a retool issue of the Stuka, this time with additional parts in the other variant, and it was zapped up to Series 3 to produce the Airfix Junkers Ju-87B2/R2 Stuka. And as I said, this was released in Series 3, and the serial number of this kit was 03030-1. The only difference between this model and the Series 2 kit is that there was an additional sprue to give you the parts for drop tanks that go underneath the wings to make the aircraft a long-range variant. 1978 goes through to 1982, and again MPC have I think this is the last MPC release. This is actually the Series 2 kit, not the Series 1, and this was 14203. So yeah, I'm pretty sure this was the Series 2 kit that was released by MPC through Airfix. Just want to go through to a last rendition. This is the Ju-87B/R Stuka, released through Airfix Lodella. This again is a Series 3 kit release, and is under the same serial number as released in 2006 as 03030. And then you have what I have to put in as the new tool Airfix under Hornby Productions. This kit is really, really nice. I've recently bought a model of this kit, but it's not this variant. It is a B1 variant, but it's not this particular boxing. It's the more modern boxing. And I'm going to be using the transfers that I'm not going to be using in this kit to apply to the Series 1 kit that I'm building here. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing and how I'm going to get around the transfers issue. Anyway, we'll just also, just to show you that Airfix also do a dogfight double with the new release Stuka and the new release Gloucester Gladiator Mark 1. And that is the last boxing of the Airfix kit as we know it, the Airfix models that were released through those. That's the picture of the decals that you got in the Series 1 model. Not a lot of decals in there, and it's interesting to note that these decals were actually incorrect, because the upper crosses were slightly smaller than the lower crosses. And you'll see that when you see the new modern decals that I'm going to be using. Anyway, I thought I'd show you a nice image here. Here is a Junkers Gemmo, a Junkers Gemmo powered Ju-87 B2. Not sure which theatre of operations this has been flown in, but I've got a feeling it could be the Russian front. Balkans-based aircraft from around about 1941. Anyway, let's just pan the camera down and let's have a look at this really quite nice little kit, although it's nothing to write home about parts wise, but I think you'll be interested in what we have here, because this is really a piece of history, it really is. Now, I can remember this kit being in Woolworths when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I always fancied buying it, and then my brother bought it and built it, and I'll talk about that later on, but it was always a kit I always fancied and never got round to buying it, so I've never built this kit before, ever. So we'll have a look at the artwork. The artwork is typical Roycross. You know, there's quite a lot of action going on there. His artwork, his artistry was superb, and there's also a label on this kit marked W.H. Smith's 23P, which would date this kit around about 1971. No, it would have been about 1973-74, sorry, because 23P was about what Series 1 kits cost in 1973-74. We'll have a look at that in a minute. First of all, before I take the parts out of the blister pack, because it is a blister pack, we'll have a look at the instruction leaflet. On the bottom of the instruction leaflet, you've got some general instructions and some stats and information, and it's in 3 different languages. I think that's English on the left, French in the middle, and German on the right. And it just gives you some information about what to do and how to build the kit, follow the instructions and whatnot, and then there's some stats information. Yeah, it's a 211DA engine in the B1, 1200 horsepower. That's quite, you know, it's quite powerful, isn't it? But anyway, the instructions, as I said, it's a blister pack kit, so the instructions are all in one. You've got the artwork on the front, the parts are carried inside a blister pack inside, and then you've got the colour call out and paint plan on the back on the flap, and the instructions are actually part of the card kit. And you've got 4 steps to build this kit up, and there's not an awful lot of parts, and it doesn't look like a complicated build at all. Typical Airfix Series 1 construction here. Stage 1, you're basically building the airframe, and it shows you how the angles should look and how the aircraft should look from the front when you put the wings on. The propeller will rotate with the little retainer there that you don't glue onto the fuselage, but you do glue it into the back of the propeller. Stage 2 is a tailplane assembly with the tailplane strut supports there, quite easy. Stage 3 is to put the dive brakes, the undercarriage, and those, I believe they're aileron stroke flaps. They would have acted as the ailerons, and they're full length. And the flaps, I think the flaps would have been these inboard sections, and the ailerons would have worked independently at the back there. But I think you can drop them all as flaps, you know, when they come in. So yeah. And then stage 4, you've got the machine gun, the two pilots, well, the air gunner and the pilot who go through the little recesses in the airframe there, and then the canopy, and the machine gun goes in the back of the canopy with the aerial that sits on the front. So there's not a huge amount to do on this kit, not a huge amount at all. You've got Airfix colorways there, which you can use any type of paints to produce this, and there's loads of color conversion charts available online. But you can see from here, these crosses on the top of this kit should be smaller, actually quite a bit smaller, and these crosses here should be a little bit smaller as well, because these crosses, these were right, these crosses underneath were right, but the aircraft should have carried some of these codes underneath the wings, but fortunately the modern release Airfix kit has got those codes, so I'm going to be able to utilise the decals that I don't need for the modern kit build in this kit, so it shouldn't be an issue. But these crosses and these crosses should be smaller. Paint guides underneath, it's light blue and two-tone splinter green camouflage on the top, and a matte black bomb with matte black tyres front and back. Quite easy, no issues there. So let's have a look, see what we get inside the kit, shall we? Let's just have a look. To open a blister pack, it was always quite easy. You just, I'm going to get a pair of scissors because I don't want to damage this too much, because this, funnily enough, these blister pack packaging are quite collectible, and you can often sell these, if they're in pretty good condition, online as a separate entity. You didn't have to, do you know what I mean? Let's see if I can get this off the top of here. They were designed to just slide your finger underneath, but with age, yeah, with age, it's not so easy, is it? But that's going to come off all right. It looks like it's going to come off. There we go. And then all I'm going to do is just pop the top of the flap, and I should be able to get the parts out quite easily. And then I won't have damaged too many of the parts. I won't have damaged the packaging too much, and I should be able to sell that on when I finish the build on this kit. You've got a nice little stand with this model. These were common in all Airfix kits. You've got a stand in all Airfix kits regardless of the series, and the small ones went in the series 1 and 2 kits, and these are quite sellable as well. They're quite collectible. They also carried the old scroll style. I don't know if you can see it there. I'm going to try and get that so that you can see it. But they carried the old scroll style logo on the stand there. Can you see it? And that's quite a collectible stand. You can usually get around about £1 or £2 for those stands, no problem whatsoever, on eBay or other sites. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to segregate the parts that are loose, because there are a few of them, and then show you the parts that you need to see without showing you them again, if you know what I mean. You only really need to see one wing, one fuselage half, one tail plane, one flap, the propeller. Everything else can go back in the blister, which is great. Oh, I've just pulled the strut off the blister pack stand. Never mind. It'll still sell because it's complete. You know, it's just not complete on the sprue. Never mind. Right, let's put the bits in that you don't need to see twice, because they're basically the same as the bits that I am going to show you. Have a quick look at the canopy first. This is the canopy. A lot of people think that kit's quality are denoted by the quality of the canopy, and it's not coming into focus very easily, is it? But maybe if I do that, or maybe if I do that, I'll be able to show you the canopy. It is pretty clear, but it's not fantastically crystal clear. And the shape of the canopy, it's not really true to life of a Ju-87 canopy, because this section here in the canopy should be slightly raised because it's supposed to slide back, and this canopy section here is also supposed to be slightly raised because that's supposed to slide back as well. And the forward canopy section slides over the top of the rear canopy section when they slide open, to allow the crew to excite the aircraft. But it's nicely framed, as you can see. It's quite nicely framed. I think it will paint up quite nice, and it's reasonably clear. You are going to see some detail in there. We'll have a look at the sprue first. Actually, you don't need to see that second pilot because he's exactly the same as the first one. I always think that's funny with Airfix, that the air gunner and the pilot are the same figure, and they really should be different, shouldn't they? We've got the trousered undercarriage there. Again, not much to write home about. It's covered in sink marks and what you call shrinkage. couple of sink marks there. They'll file down all right. You've got the propeller retainer here, the tail wheel. Nice, it's quite nicely cast for that. I mean, you've got to remember this is 1957 tooling. The machine gun, it's a bit blobby, isn't it? The bomb's got a massive hole in it. Yeah, that's the only bomb in the kit. The real bomb on a Ju-87 didn't even look like that. The air brakes, and then you've got that very Airfix-y pilot. Or is he the air gunner? I'm not sure. Part 16 is the air gunner, and that one is part 15, so he's the pilot. Not a lot to write home about. Coming into focus. Propeller. It's a pretty crude propeller. It's not fantastically cast, but it's okay. And again, you've got to remember this is 57 tooling, so, you know, yeah, not too bad. Tailplane. The tailplane is festooned in rivets, which I'm hoping you're going to be able to see. Can you see them there? This camera is not very good at picking up hot teeth. There we go. You can see the rivets and the raised panel lines in that part. Yeah, full trim, full width trim on the elevator. Which again, it's having a problem picking it up. Massive sink mark on the underside of that tailplane. That'll have to be removed. But you know, this is what you come to expect when you build old tool kits. That's one of the full length flap stroke aileron. Again, that's covered in rivets and raised panel lines. Got your little location tabs there. Yeah, interesting. Then you've got the underside wing. Again, it's festooned in rivets, raised panel lines. There's quite a bit of shrinkage there in that part. Yeah, not much to write home about, but at least it will look like a Stuka, I hope. That's the upper wing surface. You've got your two tabs there. Can you see them for locating them into the fuselage half? And then the upper wing. Again, you've got quite a bit of rivets and raised panel lines in that. They are quite severe as well. That might require a little bit of sanding down. And then you've got the fuselage half, and this is typical fuselage half for 1950s technology. You've got the locating pins for the bombs underneath, for the bomb underneath. The exhaust stubs are all one part built into the fuselage. This oil cooler on the side here is actually far too small. The actual side of the airframe is, I mean, bearing in mind the Ju-87 was all metal construction. There's quite a bit. I think the control surfaces are fabric covered. There's quite a lot of raised lines and rivets going on there as well. That might even need a sand down as well. But those exhaust stubs, they're pretty crude, aren't they? Let's see what I can do with those. Can you see the slightly larger radiator on the underside of the fuselage there? How it's slightly bigger than the A and much bigger than D, because the D variant had an oil cooler there instead of a radiator. Radiators are under the wings, inboard, just inside the undercarriage oleos, trousers if you like, you know. Anyway, that's the parts. As I said, they're not much to write home about. Not a lot going on there. There's only 25 parts in total, which isn't very many, is it? Put that all together. Give you that little little image there, so you can see it as I read this gun felt. It's quite a lot of options and costs, and some of them are an interesting price, but it's interesting to see what they are. The inbox review is covering the Airfix Junkers Ju-87B Stuka. The release date originally was 1957, but I have a Type 4C blister pack release from 1974. The serial number is 01011-3, and the kit's released in 1/72 scale. Now, the original decals for this kit that come with the blister pack are for a Ju-87B1 Stuka, serving the Luftwaffe, I believe, in the French campaign, but it could possibly be the Polish campaign, around about circa 1939 to 1940. Now there are 24 parts on one silver grey plastic sprue and one transparent part, making 25 parts in total. The dimensions of the kit are about 5 3/4 inches long by 8 inches in span, and it should sit about 2.5 inches high on its undercarriage. Now the options and costs, they only cover 1/72 scale kits, but they are of the Ju-87A, B, D, G and R variants. The standalone kits are as follows. AMG do a modern release of a Ju-87A. No prices available on that, and it's not very easy to get a hold of, but it does. I've seen the sprues on this online, and it doesn't look too bad at all. There's quite a lot going on there. Academy do a Ju-87B2, a G1, a G2 and a JS2 for about £8 to £14. Airfix's original 57 tool of the Ju-87B goes for anything between £10 and £70. Airfix also did a 1978 tooling of a B2 Ju-87 for about £5 to £38, and they also did a Series 3 Ju-87 B2 and R2 1978 tool for about £5 to £24. Airfix's modern release kit of the B1, B2 and R2 2015 tool are of they retail anything between £8 and £18, but you can usually buy them in the shops for about 16 quid, 16.99, something like that. Airfix also did a modern release, 2016 release, I think, of the Ju-87 R2 and the Gladiator Mark 1 dogfight double. That retails for anything between £25 and £30. Now, a company called Aviastend, they did a Ju-87B, not that good apparently, for about, well, sorry, there's no pricings available. Bilek did a Ju-87B2 and R2 for about £14 to £16. Checkmaster Resins, CMR, they did a Ju-87A1, which is a resin kit. No prices available on that, but it's probably about 20 to 25 quid. Frog did quite an interesting and quite crude Ju-87G for £6 to £30, and Frog also did a G variant of the 87 with a Hurricane dogfight double pack for about £40 to £50. Flugzeug did a Ju-87A, no details on that. Fujimi did a Ju-87B, a B and an R, and a D1, a D5, a G1 and a G2 for anything between £6 and £25 in their individual boxings. Hella did a Ju-87B1 for about £11 to £17. Hella also produced a Bataille de France, which was a special Battle of France variant boxing, which included a Ju-87B1, a Bloch MB174 and a Deweytine D520C. They were all Hella release kits. No prices available on that, but if you do see one of those, I bet it's over £60. Hi-Tech do a resin and white metal version of the Ju-87A. No pricings available on that. Hobby Boss do a reasonable Ju-87 D3 and G1 for about £10 to £16. Idea do a Ju-87G. No prices available on that. Italeri do a really nice Ju-87B2. I built this kit before, it's really nice. They also do a D2, a D5 and an R2 for about £10 to £25. Mavi, M-A-V-I, they do a Ju-87A and a B, but beware they're vac form and white metal kits. No prices available on those. Matchbox did a Ju-87 D3 and a G1 for about £6 to £30. Otaki did a Ju-87B for about £25 to £32. Polysteel did a Ju-87B for £20 to £25. And Revell did a Ju-87B and R for £4 to £22. Revell also did a Ju-87D and G for about £8 to £20. I do want to mention something about these Revell kits, because the early tool Revell kits, they were a little on the crude side, but they have got quite a lot going for them. They were better than the Airfix early tool release, and they had an engine in the front which you could have an accessible panel off. to show the engine. Revell also did an 80th anniversary gift set of the Battle of Britain gift set for £37 to £55. I believe this consists of a Ju-88, a Hurricane and a Spitfire and a Stuka, Ju-87B and R. These are all the old toolkits and they're pretty terrible. Special Hobby did a Ju-87A, a D3, a D5 and an N for about £12 to £22, but also the Ju-87A in this kit for some reason retails between £50 and £60. Now there were a few reboxings. Airfix Corporation of America reboxed the 57 tool Ju-87B. No prices available on that, but it's probably about 10 to 15 quid. Airfix Lodella did a 1978 a 1978 reboxed tooling of the Airfix kit. No prices available on that. And Airfix Tomy did a 57 tooling reboxed Ju-87B. Again, no prices available on that. Astro Kit did a Ju-87B reboxed Fujimi kit. No prices available on that. Dayusha did a Ju-87G1, which is a reboxed Academy kit, £12 to £16. Hasegawa Frog did a reboxed Frog kit of the G variant of the Ju-87 for £10 to £20. Hella Humbrol did a Humbrol rebox of the Ju-87B1, £12 to £15. And Hella Rico again did a Ju-87B1 of the reboxed Hella kit. No prices available for that. Hobby 2000 did a Ju-87D1, a D3N, a D7 and a G2, which are reboxed Academy kits, £10 to £30 for those. Hobbycraft did a Ju-87G reboxed Idea kit, no prices available on that. MPC did a 1957 retooled Ju-87B, £25 to £35. They also reboxed the 78 tool Series 2 Airfix kit. Again, no prices available on that, but it's probably about the same. And MPC Coca-Cola, they reboxed the 57 tool Airfix Ju-87B. Again, no prices available on that. MPM Productions did a Ju-87A, which is a reboxed Flugzeug kit, 25 to 30 quid. Modelist did a Ju-87G1 reboxed Academy kit. No prices available on that. Plasti did a Ju-87B, which is a reboxed 57 tool Airfix kit. No prices available on that. Premium Hobbies did a Ju-87G2 reboxed Academy kit for £25 to £32. Revell did a Ju-87B2 and R2 reboxed Taleri kit, £10 to £20. Revell Seji did a Ju-87B2 and R2 reboxed Revell kit. No prices available on those. Revell Seji also did a Ju-87G2 reboxed Revell kit. No prices available on those. Revell Concours did a Ju-87G2 reboxed Revell kit. No prices available on that. Revell Great Britain did a Ju-87B and R and a Ju-87G. They're individually reboxed Revell kits. No prices available on those. Revell Coca-Cola also did a Ju-87B and R and a Ju-87G2 individually reboxed Revell kits. No prices available on those. And Revell Lodella, again ditto here, a Ju-87B and R and a Ju-87G2 reboxed Revell kits individually. No prices available on those. Revell New Zealand also reboxed the Ju-87G2. No prices available on that. Tamiya reboxed the Ju-87B2 and R2 and the G2 kits from Italeri for about £9 to £15. They're actually quite good deals there. Testers did a reboxed Hella kit, the Ju-87B2, £18 to £25. Testers Fujimi also released the Ju-87G2 reboxed Fujimi kit for £18 to £25. UPC reboxed the Ju-87B Frog kit for about £10 to £20. And lastly, Svezda reboxed the Italieri kit of the Ju-87B2 and another boxing of the G2. These go for about £10 to £25. Conclusions. This is a very old tool and it shows its age. I have never built this kit before, but I'm looking forward to getting stuck into it, as it was a kit that featured very strongly in wargaming when me and my brother played war back in the day. Crude tooling and bad fit will probably be order of the day, but it will, I'm sure, be a fun build for the nostalgia. Kits worthy of note are the Italeri based J-Ready 7Bs and the Matchbox J-Ready 7D and G based kits. They are simple but accurate. Also, the new tooled Airfix kit is an absolute gem. I will be doing a review on the Revell Early Tool J-Ready 7B and R kit very soon, and it has a lot to offer even though it's an old tool, so look out for that video when it gets released. I hope this video has been of use. If you have any queries, questions, anything, just pop them in the comments and I'll try and get back to you as quickly as possible. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye bye for now.